Can you give it up one more time for Raina Case?
Thank you. I have to be so honest. I haven't had to preach in English in a while and without having a translator. So I'm a bit sometimes where like, when you have a translator, it's really nice because I get to be like, okay, so then this is what I have to say while they're like translating it. But, unfortunately, that's not how it's going today. And I have to just think fully formed thoughts, which is super, super great. But, I am so excited that I have gotten to be here for the past almost 3 weeks. I haven't been home in 10 months. Is that probably right? Yeah. Since September, when I left the first time. And I'm really happy to be here because if you can't tell, number one, I'll address the elephant in the room. I've never been this pale in my life. Ireland does not see sun. And I've already burnt like 3 times here, and I only went out to the beach once. Actually, I went twice. But like, I was driving in my car and definitely got a tan. So I'm really happy for that sake. But also just like, man, I've missed my community here. I've missed my family here. If you were at my Songs and Stories thing last night, I was really just talking about how like community is what I found to be one of the most important things. And so I'm just really, really happy to be here and see all of you. And before I begin, I just also want to say, like, I'm so thankful for all of you who have been praying for me, all of you who have been financially supporting me. Like, I do feel it, and I am obviously, like, with financial, I wouldn't be able to still be there and wouldn't be able to eat, and I wouldn't have been able to go take a team to Wales a couple months ago and go to England last month and like all these things. And yeah, you're also a part of this with me. Like all of you who are praying for me and, even like asking my family about how I'm doing, like you're a part of this with me. So I'm really thankful for all of you. So the title of this message kind of feels a bit funny. Because honestly, I was thinking about Where's Waldo? Does everybody remember those books? Yeah. I'm quite young, so if I remember them, everybody should. Believe it or not, I just hit 20 like 2 weeks ago. Yes, made it. So the title of my message is Where Was Jesus? So like Pastor Sean was saying, I called him the beginning of this month, the end of last month, something like that, I don't know. And I was like, hey, I booked my plane tickets home. I am going to be here for 2 Sundays, and I would love to share. And mainly how things go in my life of ministry, what it normally looks like is I show up to a place sometimes, and people are like, great, we want you to talk about this. And I was like, oh, you just told me that I was coming to do a worship song, and now you want me to give a whole message about condemnation? Someone said that to me one time, and I was like, Lord, what? I don't know what to do. And they're like, and preach in 5 minutes. And I was like, okay. And the Lord always gives a word, and it kind of wasn't on condemnation, but it ended up working out okay. And like a month or so ago, I was reading through the Gospel of John, which is one of my favorite Gospels. And the story of Mary Magdalene, when Jesus was resurrected and he was no longer in the tomb. Like when she goes and she's sitting there and she's waiting for him and she realizes that there's no one in the tomb, and then she goes and gets the disciples. We'll talk about it in a minute. And that story, I was reading it, and I literally just began to weep. And in my room in Northern Ireland, I have this picture that I have acquired. I'm not sure how I've acquired it. It's an art piece. And I'm pretty sure I might have stolen it from our prayer room, to be perfectly honest. I think that's what happened. And we have like a prayer room in our base where I live. And I am surrounded by artists. Like people are either musicians or they're singers or they're like the most outstanding people who can draw like I've ever seen in my life. Like it's insane, and it's such a gift, and it's really cool to be surrounded by that. And I have this picture. I wish I would have taken a picture of it, but I forgot. Hanging above my bed, and it is Jesus, and he's holding a watering can, and out of the watering can is like this colorful water, and it's just pouring onto this garden. And the whole picture is painted off of this chapter in John chapter 20. And it's this whole picture of Jesus is gardening us even when we don't recognize him. So that's why this is called Where Was Jesus? Because where is Jesus when we don't recognize him? We don't know. So I'm going to explain, because this also isn't like me, to read, how many verses do I have here? Hold on. To read like 9 verses in one chapter. I don't love doing that. Normally, if you've been at Exalt for like more than a month, I'm pretty sure you have learned that Pastor Sean is really great at grabbing like every scripture that connects in the Bible. And I love it because it's like you're not just looking at the one thing, you're like, oh my gosh, the Lord has been saying this the whole time. And I also love doing that, but today the Lord said, no, we're going to look at one passage. So I actually have one small passage, and we're going to break it down and talk about it, because sometimes I think we can forget that the gospel is really simple, and the word of God is really simple. And yeah, it's really good to break all those other things down, but sometimes it's really simple, and sometimes we just need to look at a couple verses to really actually hear what the Lord is saying to us. So I'm going to do a, not an SM Hudson moment, because I'm not that, but a Raina moment, where I'm going to paraphrase for you a couple of the context before this chapter. So if we all want to turn to John chapter 20, I spoke in Wednesday at the youth group, and I had this word, and I felt like it was really on the point and strong, and everybody got the idea that I was saying. And for this, I actually feel like the Lord is really wanting to say, I want to speak to everybody individually today. So forgive me if I'm maybe being a bit brief in my explanation. I actually want to leave room for the Holy Spirit to interpretate. So in John chapter 20, in the beginning of this story, it's the early in the morning. It says that it's still dark out, and so it's really early. I don't know why anybody would want to be up that early. And Mary goes to the tomb where Jesus had just been laid, and she finds that someone has rolled away the stone, and there is just linen cloths on the stone where Jesus was. We all know the story of at least the resurrection of Jesus, right? And if we don't, then come find somebody, and we'd love to tell you. And so she goes, and she goes to get Simon, Peter, or a disciple, anybody. She goes and she finds Simon, Peter, and John. And she was like, they've taken away our Lord. They've taken him. And I don't know where they've put him. So they all went back with her. And this is in the moment where, this is something I love about the Gospel of John, is because I feel like it's so human. If any of us were to write a gospel, we would definitely leave commentary about how we ran faster than the other person. And maybe I would, but I wouldn't be the one running faster. And John, this is where he's like, and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. Wow, Jesus did love him, but they ran, and he got there first. And that's not the most important, but it is important because it's in the Bible. And they found the linen folded, but there was no Jesus. And then at the end of verse 10, so I'm jumping through 1 through 10, it says, let me find it. Actually, maybe I'll read this. It says, this is in verse 8. I'll read it. I don't have it, didn't give it to them, but it says, "Then the other disciples who had reached the tomb first also went in, and they saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scriptures. They did not yet understand the scriptures that he must rise from the dead." Okay, that's like, okay, they didn't understand the scriptures. Then the disciples went back to their homes. That is so interesting to me. And I know I'm giving you all of this for context to get into the rest of it, but I can't not say something about that. They saw that Jesus was gone, the man who had just brutally died, right? They saw his linen folded up, which is so kind of Jesus. I mean, I'm still awful at folding my laundry, even living in a different country. And it's true, you can ask my roommates. I put it on my bed, and I'm like, I'll fold it at the end of the day. And then the end of the day comes, and I put it on my chair. Then I go to bed. And Jesus folded the linens, and they walked into the tomb and saw that Jesus wasn't there. And then they went, well, I think I'm going to go home now. I believe that he's risen, but I think I'm going to go home now, because what else am I to do? And Mary didn't leave. So I want to read, and they do have this up on the screen, verse 11, and then we'll go a little bit through and we'll stop. But it says here, "But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. And as she wept, she stopped to look into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. They said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping?' And she said to them, 'They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him.'" Okay, we're going to stop there. First off, if I saw 2 angels sitting, and listen, I know this is a story that's been talked about a lot, but I think sometimes when we hear something that's been talked about a lot, we are really quick to turn off from it. And there's always something new that the Lord's wanting to reveal to something. So if I'm repeating something and you've already heard this, please just stay with me. She sat. If I were to see 2 angels, I think I would immediately be alarmed. Not necessarily alarmed, I wouldn't be I would just be like, what? My understanding of what angels look like, number one, I don't think I'd be so casual about it. And number 2, she's just standing there weeping. They had just found out that Jesus is gone. And to Mary, and hopefully to us, Jesus is literally everything. And he's gone. And he deserves more than just being taken away and nobody knowing where he is. And so she sees these 2 angels, and all the other disciples believed what she said, and they left because it was basically spilled milk to them, and they're not going to cry over spilled milk. And she just goes, no response of anything crazy. I mean, maybe she did, it's not written there, so I'm just going off of what's written. And they've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid him. And so the way that I picture this, I have it in my notes. It says the Raina interpretation, because I don't have a cool name to be SM Hudson, or I guess I could be I don't know. It doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. So the way I picture this is she had just shown everybody that he's taken away, and they all were like, well, that's great. I'm going to go home, but if you want to stay here and cry about it, that's fine. And then Mary just stood there and cried. And I was thinking about that and how, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but then I was like, you know what? I grew up with siblings. How many times in my life did something really dramatic happen to me, and I came and showed them, and I was crying, and they were like, okay. Did anybody else grow up with siblings? And listen, like, this isn't to pick on my siblings. I didn't fair warn them, because honestly, I got very good ones, and my brother never tied me to a chair. I had to ask him to tie me to a chair. True story. And I think, like, in this context, the way that these disciples and Mary were living in community, it's almost like that. She's like, look, Jesus is gone. This is the biggest, worst deal of my life. And they're like, he is gone. I believe you. But I can't do anything, so I'm going to go home. And I find it really interesting that Mary stayed, because I think, would I have stayed? Would you have stayed? If you saw that Jesus was gone and you can't do anything about it because he had already died, right? And they believed her, and so they went home. And I really began to think, like, okay, Jesus, I really love you. Actually, I was praying about this morning. I was like, okay, Lord, well, number one, guide my tongue, please, and help me and fill in the gaps. And then I was like reminded of this story that I felt really fit with this. Because I was really thinking, like, would I have stayed, Lord? If I noticed that you were gone and I wanted to find you, would I have stayed and waited for you to come back? Or would I just have gone home? And I was thinking about this time. I was reminded of this time. I must have been 10 or 11, okay? And I think I was just talking about this with my mom or somebody. And so my siblings and I were home alone, and we were really chill when we were home alone. Like, my sister would watch a movie, my brother would play in his room, he probably would, like, build Lego or play video games, you know? Like, we were really chill. We moderately liked each other and were really kind to each other, as long as we, like, gave each other some space sometimes, you know? And my sister would watch a movie in the living room, my brother would be in his room, and I would be in one of two places. I would be probably baking a cake, because why not? Or I would be in my room, and I would be probably trying to, like, jimmy rig build a hammock that I could put my chair in and sit in my chair. Like, if you knew me as a child, then you understand. Because I was really trying to make random stuff out of scarves all the time. And so this one time, I was in our kitchen, and we had this, like, big, what is it called? I want to say wardrobe, but it's a drawer. Thanks. I can't think of anything other than wardrobe. And there was a drawer that we used as, like, a cabinet. And so it had, like, these, like, glass. It was an IKEA drawer, so know where this is going. And we put, like, our coffee maker on it, and, like, we kept all of our, like, glass baking stuff in there because we didn't put it up high on the shelves that were opened. And the house that we moved into at first, the house we have now, like, we really had to work on it. So everything was always a work in progress. And so I was doing something in the kitchen. Might have been making lunch, because I loved making lunch for everybody. And now that I'm older, this is what I think actually happened. In the moment, did I tell my parents this is what happened? Definitely not. Okay? I'm pretty sure I wanted to see how many of the drawers could open and if I could get them all opened at the same time. And now, mind you, these were glass, like, topped drawers. Now, did I tell my parents that's what I did? No. I definitely told them that just, like, one of the drawers was opened. And this whole thing just happened to happen that way. And so I opened the drawers, and what happened? It fell on me. This whole entire cabinet with, like, 8 drawers fell on me. And this 10-year-old kid, and I wasn't, like, the tallest. I'm not the tallest. But I was even shorter when I was 10, you know? Don't let these fool you. And so glass was everywhere, and somehow I just, like, didn't scream or cry or anything. I just kind of, like, accepted that I had just done this to myself. And we also had tile floors. This is a good, like, add-on. And at that point, maybe we just had concrete floors. So whatever we had, glass was going to break the second it touched. And my sister casually walked in from our living room, and I remember she walked in like this, and she looked at me, and she walked out of the room. and we exchanged no words. She just saw that I was laying on the ground under this cabinet. And I was just like, obviously I need help. There's glass on the floor. And so she just went back, and I heard her put her movie back on, and I hear like the voice of the some nature documentary come back on, and I was like, well, I guess I'm sitting here for a while. I don't know how my brother hasn't heard this yet. And then I'm laying there, and eventually I was like, Ella, like I just started calling her, right? I was like, hey. So she came back in finally, and I was like, at that point I was crying, okay? So at that point I had been left under a cabinet crying. And I was like, go get Micah. Like, I just remember being like, go get Micah. And she was like, why? And I was like, I'm under the cabinet. Like, it fell. And literally, this conversation went back for probably like 5 minutes. And finally, something else fell off the counter. I remember Micah heard it fall this time, and he came out of his room. So she did not indeed go get him. And if I'm remembering this right, yeah, she did not indeed go get him. And he came out and saw me laying under this cabinet. And eventually, he will immediately, he was like, get out. Like, he's trying to help me get out from this. And he's like telling Ella, he's like, go get chairs from the dining room. Like, we're going to prop it up so that this thing doesn't fall down more. Like, so eventually, Micah and I, because Ella got chairs and then put her documentary back on. And she was young. It's okay. Also, she was so tiny. She wouldn't have been able to sit on one of those chairs and it not move. I mean, she was so tiny. And so Micah and I are sitting on these chairs, holding up the cabinet. And at that point, I think we still had a home phone. And so one of us got our home phone and called our parents, and we're like, you need to come home. This is broken, and it's falling, and there's glass everywhere, and we're not good at cleaning up glass. We're like 10 and 13, Like, this is a bad situation. And so my parents came home, and I was like, I'm so sorry the drawer was open. Like, definitely that's not what happened. But, like, I'm forgiven. And honestly, like, it wasn't that big of a deal. I was safe. I was fine. My brother was fine. Everybody was fine. We lost a couple things, but things don't really matter. And the point of me telling you that story is, how many times has something happened that has made in our lives that has made us feel like we're underneath a cabinet crying? And I know that's a funny analogy, but it's actually like, how many times have we been looking for someone and calling for someone to come and save us? And they come into the room and they look at us under the cabinet and they go, right, you'll figure it out. Are you following me? Do you understand? How many times have we been like Mary, where we came and we showed somebody, this is a problem, this is an issue, I'm not doing okay. And someone came and looked at you and said, yeah, I can see that. I believe you. All right, I'm going to go home. And in those moments, it's actually not that we need someone to save us, because someone can't save us. Only Jesus can save, right? It's that, who are we calling for? Who are we seeking? Who are we asking to save us? Because if I'm asking my 8-year-old sister to come and save me from under a cabinet, can she do that? No. But if I'm asking my brother, who's bigger and stronger than me, who also, maybe cares and understands a little bit more about my well-being, he helped me, right? He cared to save me. Let's go to verse 12. Oh, no. Is it verse 12? Verse 14. That's where I want to go. And it says this: having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know it was Jesus. I'm going to keep going. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" And supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." So Mary's standing there, presumably by herself. I would assume that there was other people around. And maybe I'm wrong, but like in my head, I think that's how I picture it. You know, this is a big deal to some people, and I think they'd be paying attention to the fact that, you know, somebody who is laying in a tomb is no longer laying in a tomb. But maybe she's standing there by herself, and she just talked to these angels, and it says here, which is really, really interesting, she turned around. And I looked this up in the Greek and the Hebrew, and I was like, oh, this has to mean something, you know, like turned around has to mean something. Like, this is really interesting. And it means she turned around. That's what it means. I was like searching through versions, and I was searching through like, you know, I'm getting out my concordance. I'm like, what is this saying? No, it literally means she physically turned herself around and saw Jesus. But she didn't know it was him. The only other like different wording that I could find about that, she turned around, which it actually said, and some other translations say this, is she took a step back from herself. If I was not a 10-year-old kid who was just trying to see if I could open all the drawers, and before I opened that last drawer, if I would have taken a step back and said, maybe it looks like something not so great is going to happen if I do that. Maybe I should just like look around and see if there's anybody in my vicinity who can help me if this is going to go bad. Maybe when I'm stuck somewhere and I've already brought other people to come and help me, and realize that it's actually not something that they can necessarily fix inside of me, maybe I should take a step back from within myself and turn to look and see if I've lost where I have invited Jesus. I think there's something really, really beautiful and really, really human about the fact that Mary turned around and saw Jesus. And I think sometimes, and maybe this is just for me, because let me tell you, something that I've learned in my year, I guess, of doing missions and like getting to talk to people and like share the word, is I do not get to share a word unless I have lived and walked through that word. And I'm sure you've heard that said before, but man, it is rough. Like on Wednesday, I talked to the youth group about being unoffendable. That's not an easy thing. And that's something that the Lord was like, well, if you're going to talk about it, you need to learn how to be unoffendable. And if we're going to say, like, and if I'm saying, what if we turned around, like took a step away from ourselves? What if we actually can just look around for a second and think, maybe I have forgotten what Jesus looks like. Maybe I'm not recognizing him the way that I used to. Maybe Jesus looks different than I know him to look. That's a hard one that I had to realize, actually, is like this Jesus that I thought, I was like, oh, I know him so good. Like me and Jesus were like this, you know? And then one day somebody said something to me and I was like, oh, I did not know that about Jesus. And that changes everything. Because how am I reconciling this kindness and this justice? Like how am I doing that? And sometimes, and now the reason she didn't recognize Jesus is because it's right after the transfiguration, right? It even says in the Bible, like, Jesus didn't look the same that he did before. And you know, he hadn't revealed himself to her yet, so that's part of it too. But like, if this gospel that we stand so strong on, that I mean, this is my whole entire life, like, and not that it isn't to anybody in this room, it's that I've literally said, okay, I believe in this so much, I'm going to go tell everybody that I can. And if I believe in this so much, you have to understand how transforming this is and how transforming Jesus is. And if Jesus is transforming us through the gospel, and he's transforming because he is the essence of transforming, then maybe sometimes we have to learn what he looks like again. So let's go to verse 15. It says, Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? And whom are you seeking?" And supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." And I know we already read this, but I want to read it again. Jesus asked her, "Why? So why are you crying? And who are you looking for?" You know the first two questions in the Bible, in Genesis, when Jesus talked to Adam and Eve, do you know what they were? If you do, you can say them. He said, "Where are you? And what are you hiding from?" And if that's a different translation to maybe what you know, then forgive me. But Jesus is asking, where are you? Or here he's saying, why are you crying? And who are you looking for? Like from the beginning of the gospel and from the beginning of our lives, Jesus has been asking us a question. What do you want? Who are you? Why are you crying? When your kid cries, I mean, I don't have a kid, but when a kid cries, I'm pretty sure our first response a lot of times is, why are you crying? Because we want to know what's wrong so that we can then say, okay, if someone hit your kid, you're going to be like, who hit you? I would, and I don't have kids, but I'd ask that question. Jesus literally said to her, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? And right before this, she turned around. She took a step back from herself. And then Jesus asked her, presented her this question, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? She came out of herself to then, without knowing, enter into what Jesus was inviting her into. And her response was, I'm looking for my Lord. Where is he? If you know where he is, tell me, because he should not be laid where they have him. I need to take him away to the place that he rightfully deserves. But I love how simple Jesus is sometimes. And this is sometimes, I think, like, why this whole passage, I mean, I've heard this a million times. I've been in church my whole life. I've heard this a million times. But Jesus is asking such simple questions to us. Like, what's going on and who are you looking for? And I think a lot of times, at least for me, okay, I have found that what's going on is not always a glamorous answer. There's definitely been times where Lord has asked me, like, why are you crying? And it's like, I'm just really upset because that person didn't like him. That's on me, though. But sometimes it's not like, oh, I'm crying because, like, Lord, the Lord is gone. Like, she's really holy for that, We can't be that holy all the time. And like, who am I looking for? Let's just be honest. I'm not always looking for Jesus. I would love to say that I am. I would really love to say that I'm always looking for Jesus. But I can't, even lie to myself in that. Like, we're not always looking for Jesus the way that we should be looking for Jesus. And yet, when Jesus knows that, he still asks us to give us the invitation to look for him again. So, in the next verse, in verse 16, Jesus says to her, "Mary." And she turned and she said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus called her name. And maybe this is an interpretation of me again, okay? But what if this whole time the disciples came and, Mary was there the first time, then she went and got the disciples. And then what if when all the disciples came and all of this was happening and Mary's sitting there crying, what if Jesus is just off in the corner being a gardener? What if he was just kind of paying attention to this whole thing? Actually, just that picture that I talked about in the beginning that I have above my bed of Jesus watering the plants. What if the whole time Jesus was just that's interesting. I wonder if they went home. Okay. He's down there digging some dirt, just to touch dirt. And, he's oh, okay, Mary's still here. Oh, Mary's crying. Okay, I'll let her sit for a second. And I think oftentimes we think when we're sitting somewhere crying or we're underneath a cabinet and we're stuck that Jesus isn't off really close next to us just doing the work of a gardener. We're he's gone. I've lost him. Where is he? Where was Jesus? And then I'm oh, I forgot all of you are over here. I was only looking this one way. And maybe it's when I'm laying on the floor, under a cabinet, I can't look behind me, I'm stuck. But it also takes someone to lift something up sometimes so that you can look around. And are we surrounding ourselves with the people who can lift something up so that we can look around? And I think we are. I think here, but I think maybe we're not doing it all the time either. I love Exalt. I love Exalt. I have been here, I don't even know how long, okay? And Pastor Sean said in the beginning, I've known them my whole entire life. So I can't stand here and be we're perfect, because we're not. And I'm not. But are we actually looking where Jesus was? Or are we just going to Jesus when Jesus asks us why we're crying and just saying, well, you're gone, so that's why I'm crying? Haven't heard from you in a while, and that's really why I'm crying, because, where are you? And Jesus is, trying to call your name. Jesus is trying to be Mary. And that's not pointing out to Mary, but Jesus is trying to be Raina, turn around. And I wonder, this is why I really hope that Jesus was just off on the side, gardening the whole time, because, that would just be so funny. I think that Jesus has a sense of humor like that. And I think that, if Jesus was just, disguising himself as this gardener, which isn't even a disguise. Man, something I've learned about Jesus, actually, this is one of my favorite topics, but I'm not going to go very far into it, is, and my dad laughs because he knows that I've really ranted about this, Jesus is such a gardener to us. And it's so beautiful. Man, it's so beautiful. The Lord's just let me come and pluck out these weeds and let me plant this beautiful garden, and I'm going to water this for you, okay? You plant this seed, but I'll water it for you. And he actually invites us into being all these gardeners. And that's why I love that she thought Jesus was a gardener. And that's why I really picture this of Jesus is off in the corner gardening, and the disciples are oh, that guy's doing a really good job, because he would be doing a really good job. And they're just like, well, I'm going to go home because we lost Jesus. And the second Jesus said her name, she knew it was him. The second Jesus says your name, do you know that it's him? I don't all the time. The second Jesus is disguised as a gardener, or he shows himself as a new facet that you have not yet known of Jesus, do you know that it's him? Are you willing to talk to him, even if you don't necessarily know that that's Jesus? Because you're seeking out Jesus. So the people that are in the vicinity of you, right? Mary's like turning around like, he's gone. Do you know about this man? If someone's missing, okay? If someone goes missing in the town, or one of your friends go missing, you're going to hold up a sign. And if you really want to find this person, you're going to go around town and you're going to be like, where is so-and-so? Have you seen this person? Do you recognize this person in any way, shape, or form? That's literally what Mary did. She's like, do you know this man? I'm looking for my Lord. He's gone. If we take a step back from ourselves, right? And we're like, where is Jesus? Are we going to find him? Just by like, where is Jesus? Oh, okay, there's a person over there, but like, I don't know. He kind of looks like somebody I don't really know. And this isn't me being like, oh, you need to go and like share the gospel to them. It's like when you are looking for Jesus and you can't seem to find him, but you hear somebody calling your name or somebody's close by, and maybe it's the grace of God. Maybe that's not something that you know very well. But the grace of God is off in the corner of your house, and you're like, maybe that's Jesus. And so you go up to it, and you're like, hey, I'm looking for Jesus. Who are you? Are we actually allowing Jesus to reveal himself as something new to us, or are we only knowing Jesus as the way that we recognize him? Because Jesus knows your name, even if his reflection changes. Even if like the way that he presents himself to you changes, he still knows your name. And when he calls it, are we recognizing it? Are you willing to wait, but are you willing to look? Mary waited at the tomb, and then she looked for Jesus. Are we willing to wait, and are we willing to look? I think sometimes we can just get so caught up in the fact that, like, yes, Jesus always comes and meets us where we are. Listen, I know this so well. The story of my life is like, oh, Jesus, you met me. Oh, Jesus, you met me. Oh, I was over here, you met me. Like, praise the Lord for that. But are we also willing to then meet Jesus and actually be like, Lord, okay, I have this analogy, and you know what? I'm not a runner. Okay. So if I'm wrong in this, people who are runners at the end of service tell me that I was wrong, because I want to know. But if you're running, say you're running a marathon. Has anybody in here ever ran a marathon or anything like that? Okay. Some people have. Or just run in general. I did for a little bit there. I started running with my dad, and I think it lasted like a month. It's not for me. And so if you're running, right, you don't know if you're in first place, because there's people in front of you and there's people behind you. And you don't know who's behind you. Unless you're running from someone like with a knife, you don't know who's behind you. That's what I'm assuming. No one's ever chased me with a knife. But if you're running, I'm not going to be running like this, because I'm going to fall, number one, and like that would hurt my neck, and you kind of look silly, and running already kind of looks silly. And no offense if you run. You look great all the time. If you're running, you don't know who's behind you until you stop and you realize, oh, my dad was behind me the whole time, every time that I ran. I was just running faster? Probably not. I was just running a little bit of a different way. Oh, if I would have stopped and turned around, would I have noticed that my father was behind me? Yeah. If I would have stopped, like Mary, and turned around, I would have noticed. But if I just keep running, and I just keep running, and I'm like, someone's going to meet me. I'm going to find my dad. Oh, but he's behind me, so I'm never going to notice. I'm never going to notice. We need to, and I need to, this is for me more than it is for any of you, not forget to sometimes just stop and look around and be like, okay, Lord, you're still with me? Because I know you are. I hear your voice. I recognize your voice. But I've learned so many new things about you lately. I've discovered so much newness of who you are. I've learned about your grace, which is new, and I need it. And I've learned about your justice, which is new, and I need it. And I've learned about your love, which maybe isn't new, but I still need it. And you've become even more beautiful and even more big than I've known you to be. And I just need to re-recognize what you look like. And you know, to me, like, since I am not here all the time and I talk to people on the phone, when I came here and I got in the car with my family, I kind of looked at my parents and I kind of looked at my siblings and I was like, oh, we look a little different. I look a little different. I know that I do. We look a little different as time goes on, not just because of age, but because we change in the way that we are, in the way that we live. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that as your time goes on with Jesus, Jesus changes and you don't know who he is and because he's becoming. It's actually like Jesus becomes better than you know him to be, and he looks better, and you have to re-recognize what he looks like sometimes. So, if anything that you're hearing from me from this today is, are we taking a step back and making sure that we still recognize Jesus? Are we taking a step back and making sure that we still know the sound of his voice? Who are we seeking? Why are we crying? Who are we seeking? That's a great question to ask yourself. Every time I cry, I ask myself that question. And sometimes I'm crying because I'm hungry. And sometimes I'm crying because something awful happened. And I need to go to the Lord. A lot of times it's because I'm hungry. And are we actually just taking a step back and saying, okay, Lord, I've learned so much about you. Man, you're so good. Hey, can you just show me what you look like once again? Can you just remind me of who I'm seeking every time that I call on your name? Can you just remind me that this is what you look like? Because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to be stuck underneath a cabinet crying and realize that I don't know what you look like. And I want every time that Jesus calls my name to immediately recognize him the way that Mary did. And the end of the story, Jesus tells her, oh, don't cling to me yet. I have not yet ascended to my Father. And she goes and she tells the disciples, I have seen the Lord. And that he said these things to her, and she has a little message, and it's really great. I love that part of the story. I'm not going to read it just because that's not what this little part is about, but I encourage you to go read it and read the whole chapter, actually, because it's really, really good, and there's way many better things than what I've said in here. But I want the band to come up, and I know this isn't the most long message, but I actually just think I want to take a minute, actually, and I just want us to all sit and stand and actually just be quiet before the Lord for a second and say, God, maybe you actually are really confident in what the Lord looks like. And you can recognize him like that. And maybe this isn't a now thing, and maybe that's fine. But I want us to take a second and be like, Lord, just show me once again who it is that I am recognizing, because I want to make sure that I know what you look like. And Lord, if I do know what you look like, then show me something new of yourself. Because, man, I could say that every day, especially lately, man, like every day I wake up and I am like, how is God just this good? And like, how is he better than I know him to be every day? And I'm meeting all these random people, and a lot of people who actually don't want to hear anything that I really necessarily have to say about God. And every time I leave these people's houses or like churches or these random events, all that I can think in my head is like, how is God better than I know him to be? And how is God always recognizing me? Because I change. And I sometimes don't always change in the best way. Like, I make mistakes. I get mad at people, and sometimes they hear about it, and thank God for forgiveness and kind people. And I'm, a couple years ago, definitely wouldn't stand in front of a bunch of people and share a message, and that's change, And my hair looks different because I haven't seen sun in a while, so it looks dark. I change. People didn't recognize me the first time that I came back a couple weeks ago. And we change, but the Lord doesn't change. And he recognizes us. Even despite our change, he recognizes us. But do we recognize him? And are we continuing to seek to recognize him? That's the question that I want to ask. So if you all want to stand or sit, I actually don't prefer either way. I just want you to actually find a moment with the Lord. And I'm going to pray. And I want us to just take a moment. And maybe take a step back from ourselves and actually say, okay, Lord, like, do I recognize you? Yeah, Lord, I thank you. Man, I'm so thankful for your kindness, Lord. That in the moments that we are weeping, in the moments that we are rejoicing, in the moments that we are just being, that you recognize us, and you are still calling our name, and you're still continuing to call our name. And Lord, yeah, you're forever showing us the many facets of who you are, the greatness of your being, the kindness of your character. Lord, help us to never stop seeking you, but help us to never stop recognizing the sound of your voice and the feeling of your presence. Lord, help us to never stop seeking and help us to not ever recognize you, Lord, that we just want to know you. We want to bless you. We want to love you, but Lord, help us to recognize you and help us to take a moment and really ask ourselves, Lord, show us, reveal to us the areas that we only look at you as a gardener. We only look as you as the person who's kind of standing off to the side. Lord, just reveal to us where we can recognize you in a new way.